View from the Gutters, episode 51. Welcome to View from the Gutters, the comic book podcast where each episode we discuss a collected edition, trade paperback, or graphic novel, and then recommend and vote on the book for the next episode. Warning: the discussion portion of this show has massive spoilers for that book. On this episode, we discuss the Manhattan Projects, and to skip ahead to the recommendations section, skip to 114.09.
Welcome to View from the Gutters, episode 51.
I hate you so much, Joe.
I'm Joe Preddy.
I'm Andrew Chard.
Eric Mannix.
I'm Tobias Panchin.
And I'm Kate Reynolds.
And I love how Eric never says that he is Eric Mannix. He is just announcing that Eric Mannix is a thing.
He's the...
Eric Mannix! Eric Mannix!
Either that or he's a Pokemon.
Or the elongated man.
He's the elongated man, I was going to say.
My old elongated Mannix, yes, that's my favorite. But one of my old coworkers, she made me my own Squirtle card for Christmas last year, but it was Squirtix or something like that. I don't know, some play on Mannix, I don't remember, but it was rad 'cause it was just this little Squirtle, and she cut out a picture of my head and put it on there, so it's full on a Squirtle body with this awesome bald guy's head.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I am a Pokemon in a custom made card that I find hilarious.
That's insane. The only thing that happened to me that's even close to that is when I worked at Mervyn's. A bunch of the women in the women's clothing department made me a birthday cake for my birthday, and they put a picture of a ninja on it.
Nice.
Which was great, because the joke was I was a loss prevention agent. I was the ninja. You'd never see me. Of course, I'm 6'4" and 300 fucking pounds.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna
was
say,
goddamn impossible.
That's pretty ninja.
No,
yeah,
it was
you'd
not.
have to be an expert ninja.
Yeah, no, it was like
You're like Beverly Hills Ninja.
I was definitely more.
So
like Beverly Hills
Taurans
Ninja.
really can be rogues.
Yeah.
Now we
true.
know that Blizzard's just fucking with us.
Oh God.
Anyways,
Let's not
I went
reference
to a
World of
dark
Warcraft
place
ever
fast.
again.
No Warcraft references.
Oh, that's okay. You guys are speaking another language for me.
Yeah,
there.
it's
I was
I didn't
don't
get it
know what
either.
that is.
Those are the cow people, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And they can't be you can't pick a rogue
I
if
think
you're that race.
My roommate played World of Warcraft a lot when I was in college the first time, and he was like, "Oh, you should play with me. Make an account." And so I made a Tauren and I named him Moo Mesa because I was like, "Well, that's obviously what you would name him."
You should have named him the captain.
Well, you name everything in video games.
I name everything Fuzzbutt.
Fuzzbutt. Joe's been playing a lot of Harvest Moon lately.
I've been playing a lot of Harvest Moon lately.
All right, let's talk about comic books.
Joe's
in an odd mood today. We're not sure why.
He's got a lot of pepper.
Yeah,
I do have a lot of pepper.
So
I'm gonna be reasonable though. I decided it was gonna be reasonable.
I pitched this book, so I guess I'll go first.
Go for it.
Joe and I were talking about this book the other day, and he was referring to the fact that it reminded him a lot of S.H.I.E.L.D. Right? That's the book we did.
S.H.I.E.L.D., which is another Jonathan Hickman
The Hickman
book
book that we talked about earlier. And he's like, it reminds me of that a lot. It's kind of that. And I use the analogy, the lost school of drama writing, where it's every time you think a door is going to close, actually 10 more doors open. And so nothing is ever answered. And it's just creating more and more questions. And some people really like that school of drama writing. I tend to not like that as much, which is why I'm interested in the fact that I really like Hickman and guys that write like that in comic books. I'm trying to figure out why. I disagree, though, that this is like S.H.I.E.L.D., because in S.H.I.E.L.D. there's so much that is ooh, weird, different, and we're not going to tell you what's going on. But I feel like this book answers a lot of questions through the flashbacks. It's telling you a story. It's just a long story. So you have these flashbacks of Oppenheimer. When you first meet Oppenheimer, if you know anything about Oppenheimer like I did, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? Because this is not the Oppenheimer that I know and care, to know. Because this guy's weird. And you start to understand why through the flashbacks, that it's not really him, and that it's his brother who ate him and now has him trapped in his head. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to keep reading, because now that it's not just ooh, mystery for 100 issues, it was the second issue they tell you that happens. So I was like, all right, cool. Questions are being answered. The Einstein that shows up, who's just staring into the doorway and the gateway, you're like, why is he doing that? That question's answered. I think all of the questions in the book tend to get answered pretty quickly in this book, which is why I like it. And now I feel like it's just an exploration of what does the American military machine going to do when it meets outer space aliens. Like, that's what I feel like the premise of the story is at the end of this 5-6 issues.
Yeah, and that's a cool premise. And I agree with Joe a little bit in that it's like, it's this like secret place full of scientists and they're deciding the fate of the world and like all this crazy stuff is happening. And so it's similar to S.H.I.E.L.D. on that level, which is pretty superficial, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
But as much as as much as Hickman sets up questions and then answers them, I feel like this book is all like, it's setting up and resolving things as far as the characters are concerned, but nothing ever gets resolved as the plot. It's like stuff is set up, and then more stuff is set up, and then more stuff is set up, and he's building, and he's building, and he's building, and nothing ever really happens. And like, I felt like he was almost on the cusp of something happening at the end of issue 5, so I actually read the second volume up to issue 10.
Yeah.
And still nothing is happening. Like, it's still building up to some conflict that never quite seems to get here.
Well, I think that's weird to say that nothing's happened because, like, they created a shadow government. They've dropped an atomic bomb against the president's orders. They've genocided an entire alien race. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on.
Those are kind of superficial secondary things. Like, there is no central plot.
But the central plot is, like, these characters are moving forward, and the idea is that, like, I
don't have a clear sense of where it's going.
But I think
like, there's never a moment where it's
though.
like, I understand what this book is about.
Well, that's what I like about it.
He's setting up all of these characters, and he's setting up a circumstance. It's like, okay, there's these people, and they're really, like, they're doing crazy things, and they set up a shadow government, and they accidentally kill an entire race of aliens.
Well, it's not on accident.
It's not, yeah, definitely.
Well, they go to attack them, but they don't realize that they're going to kill the entire race.
Well, that they're a hive mind, yeah.
Like, they knew that, I think they knew that they were a hive mind, and they knew they were taking out the head. I don't think that they realized that this would kill all of them.
I thought it was
feel like
fairly implied.
Yeah, because of Joseph Oppenheimer eating the alien. But
okay, I mean, maybe I was confused on that point.
The thing
is,
like,
I don't like. There's no central conflict that I really feel is there. Like, they do things, but nobody's really opposing them.
Well, the central thesis to me. And not to interrupt, because I know Eric wants to jump in on this. I can see it on his face.
Get your thoughts.
The central thesis to me on this is very similar to an idea that's brought up in Jurassic Park, which is one of my favorite books, which is where Ian Malcolm's talking about scientists as opposed to karate masters. And he's saying that, like, by the time a black belt has learned to use martial arts to kill a man, like, he knows not to, because he's also learned discipline. But a scientist doesn't have to go for years and years and years and train because they're standing on the backs of the work that someone else already did. So now they have these tools and they never ask the question, should I do this? Like, that's very much presented in this book that, like, science isn't the answer. It's just creating more problems. And on the back of the trade paperback, all it says is science, period, bad, period. And I think that that's, like, a really strong thesis to this book, that, like, these people are just doing things and they don't know what they're doing and there's no idea. Like, the general is making these decisions, but you never have any intention of why he's doing those things, because I don't think even he knows.
So I'm going to jump in at this point, because the reason I did say that I actually went back and listened to our S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast to see if I had similar problems, and they are pretty similar. What I meant is this reminds me of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the way I felt about S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
I was never able... This is Jonathan Hickman doing something that apparently he likes a lot, which is not... I say in the S.H.I.E.L.D. episode, I say it's history porn, and you correct me and say it's science porn, and it's not. It's scientist porn. It's this whole idea that these scientists are these, like, vessels for this, like, unearthly intelligence, and I think Hickman is really fascinated with that and really wants us to kind of explore what they would do if they weren't kind of, like, bound by, you know, like, mundane reality. And the thing is that I never connect with any of them. I read this whole thing and I just never care about it. Like, I feel like if you came up to me and said, "Hey, Joe, would you like to read a comic book that's about alternate versions of all your favorite scientists? I'd be like, that sounds interesting. And I'd be like, and the art is really cool too. And I'd be like, okay, I'm listening. And then, you know, you could like describe the disparate elements to me. And I would think, yeah, that sounds really good. But I never feel like they mesh. I feel like there's the narrative where there's like the shadow government and there's the general and he's doing his thing. And then the scientists are just kind of doing their science thing. But then it's kind of like, why isn't there more structure to that? I just feel like the structure is kind of, it's never something that I can grab a handhold on. And so I end up just kind of going like, because I got to the end of this and I thought, well, maybe I should read ahead. Maybe it's not, maybe it's just me. And I'll be willing to admit that this may very well be me. Like, I don't necessarily, I've read other things by Hickman that I like. I really like his run on FF. I like East of West. And I think the thing is that with this, there's just, it's too much going on for me to ever really connect with any one thing. And it's not so much that he's laying that there's just a bunch of questions with no answer. It's just that I find it kind of, I'm not able to connect with it.
It feels like a bunch of stuff with no core.
It feels disjointed and disconnected. Yeah, there's nothing
holding it together.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying regarding S.H.I.E.L.D., and I still think I'm right.
Well,
it's science
precedent
porn.
will say that you always think you're right, even when you're wrong.
But listen to what I'm saying here. That if you read Hickman's stuff, it's very obvious that he sees the universe as a system of systems. And that there are greater systems and lesser systems, and they all kind of interact. And he's, even sees, mankind as a system. And if you look at what he's doing in Avengers, it's very much about creating an Avengers engine that's going, a machine, a system that's going to produce a specific effect. And scientists are the people who understand and control those systems. And to that extent that they are important. But it is the science, that science is the magic that they're doing.
Yeah, but they're doing very little science in this, even meta-science. This is all about the scientists. Well, this is about Oppenheimer and Fermi and Feynman. And also, he refers to Albert Einstein in the back of this as highly intelligent. And I hate to tell you this, but Albert Einstein was fucking... If you're going to call Feynman a super genius, you need to call Einstein a super genius. Because they were of comparable intelligence.
Well... I mean, Einstein did steal the real theory of relativity from someone. And,
yeah, that's what everybody likes to say, stole the theory of relativity. But,
his original papers used to be published with the work of another physicist, which was his wife. And all of his, when they were republished, they took her name off of everything.
Well, but that's probably because he divorced her and married somebody else.
Yeah, but... It doesn't mean that her work shouldn't be credited.
This is not like women in the scientific community have gotten the shaft throughout history. And some of the greatest mathematical breakthroughs of like modern mathematics were like Oxford had this, it was either Oxford or Cambridge that had this room called, and they called them the calculators. And they were the women that did the figures for all the male faculty. But God forbid a woman ever teach math because we all know their tiny brains can't hold it right.
Yeah,
this is clearly 100% bullshit.
I agree to you. It's bullshit the way that women have been treated in the sciences. But I really want to hear what Eric Mannix has to say about this. Because I can see him over there.
I can see it on his face.
Yeah, I love this book. I also haven't read S.H.I.E.L.D., but I mean, I try not to compare works. I mean, I guess that's why I like Revival too, and you guys all hated it. Like, I don't know. If you do like it's like this, I mean, I can do that with any book ever. And not to say there's not any merit in that. That's just not how I choose to. To me, this book is like a character study, and to me, that in itself is valid, at least for me. Of course, I'm a big fan of psychology, sociology. Before working at the shop, I was a social worker for like 13 years. So, like, I really like to understand why people tick and how they tick, and the kind of machinations that make them who they are. So, for me, this book was fascinating in that regard. And I guess I kind of felt like it was almost like, if we are going to compare it, something like almost like the Illuminati over at Marvel, where it's like they have good intentions, but they're basically trying to rule the world in secret, and like if you had that kind of power, I mean, these guys are basically gods in a sci-fi setting where, they have all the intellect, they can, I mean, they're meeting with alien intelligences and they have doorways to other dimensions and stuff. I mean, that's pretty mind-altering stuff, reality-changing stuff, literally speaking. And I don't know, so I really enjoyed this book because of it. I've also read almost every issue. I think I'm like a couple of behind, but to me it keeps building and building and building. And again, for me, I find it really interesting. But to me, like, I guess I get excited about the character study part of it. So if you're not into that, I can see it's not going to be your book. But
I also leave every issue of this book going, I wonder what's going to happen next. And I think that's all it takes for me to read the next issue is to go, I don't know what's going to happen next because this isn't the traditional way that you would tell a story. And so I am constantly surprised by it, and I like that.
Yeah.
I hate predicting what's going to happen.
And
it's the worst.
I'm totally with you on that, and I feel like I don't want you guys to miss. Like, I'm not comparing this book to Shield. I'm comparing the way I felt about it to the way I felt about Shield.
Sure.
And then I think that's a good point. I think I definitely, I used to very much be the kind of person that would go into a movie or a book or a comic book looking for something specific. And if that thing didn't have it, then I could totally not appreciate the work at all. And I realized that that's very rigid. And so I've really tried in my adulthood, tried to kind of get around that and kind of soften a little bit because I realized that there was shit out there that had value that I was not getting to enjoy because I was so rigid in the way I looked at things. But I still feel that when you engage with a work, you're looking for something. And it may not be something specific, but you're looking for like something to hold on to. You're looking for something to care about. You're looking for something to intrigue you. And you can keep going as long as at the end you can say, I want to know what happens next. And for me, it's not even so much of like, I already figured out who did it. It could be like, why did they do it? Or how did they do it? Or something like that. Like, that to me is just as important. But the minute you stop caring, the minute you put down an issue of something, or you end an episode of something, or you what have you, the minute you're like, well, I don't care what happens next.
Yeah.
Then it's really becomes a chore to read the next one. And I think
that actually is exactly what happened to me. Sorry, I'm not talking very loud.
I'll turn you up. Don't worry about it, Kate.
Okay, so I had two main problems with this book, and they were two of the exact same problems I had with S.H.I.E.L.D. Now, I didn't hate this one like I did S.H.I.E.L.D.
Cade's on the hate train lately.
I was actually not on
Cade wasn't on that podcast.
I wasn't on the S.H.I.E.L.D. one, and I was like, that's okay, because I didn't like it. And I was still pretty new, so I didn't realize that we could actually hate the books we were talking about.
Hating something is always an option.
Oh,
but
God,
no,
it's a requirement.
I hate you. I hate all of you.
Oh, you fucking hate stuff too.
I have this thing, I guess, it's called the Hickman curse for me. Because every time we're supposed to record a Hickman book, I get sick. And luckily we postponed this episode so that I could be on it. So that I could record about this. Okay, so my two main issues. One is with the art, and it is a problem that I had with S.H.I.E.L.D. as well. And when I say it's a problem with the art, it actually could be a problem with the writing, and I just don't realize what is going on. And that is an issue with same face.
I didn't really notice a lot of same face, although I did have a lot of problems with the art on this.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble trying to remember who each character was, and sometimes I thought that it was one character and it turns out to be another.
I think that, the ones that I have a problem with are Oppenheimer and the guy with like the Vulcan ears. When the guy with when he's got the green helmet on, when he goes to meet the aliens and you can't tell that his hair's black because Oppenheimer's is white, I for a minute thought that he was Oppenheimer.
I never really had a problem with that. I thought that Oppenheimer looked a lot like Truman. Although Truman is always wearing the giant Masonic helmet, so that's not really hard to tell apart. I really didn't like the way that it was drawn, and like I don't think that the artist is bad. I just really disliked the style of it. It was so kind of.
I love
the art is actually.
I don't know, scratchy.
I really like the art.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's like I love the way he draws the machines, like how technical everything is.
Yeah,
like when like when Einstein's putting together the door and he's got it all laid out in front of him, like how technical everything looks, and when they're walking around the facility and you can see the science happening in the background, like all the machines are like really crazy, and I like how not saturated.
Science is happening.
Yeah. Science and technology. I like how the colors aren't super saturated. Like I think the colorist did a really good job on this, and I love the flashbacks in blue and red.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's like a lot of really cool stuff going on, like the glow from inside the machine and the weird like kind of temporal stuff that's going on when like the Death Buddhas bring the doorways open, and I really like the art in this a lot. Like, this is why I picked it up, was I flipped through it and was like, holy shit, I need to read this.
I think the other thing I didn't like about it is that people are kind of dicks in this book.
Well, they're mega dicks.
Yeah, I mean,
but
that's kind of the point.
Yeah.
But actually, I wanted to
that.
talk about the red and blue.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to figure out what the significance of the red and blue were, and I couldn't get it. Like, every time I thought I kind of understood what they were getting at, something would be like a color that it didn't seem that it should be, and I was like, okay, what's the metaphor here? What is the red and blue? Like, it has to have some greater significance just than things having red and blue.
I think my interpretation, and this may be not a good one because I haven't really thought about this that hard, but I always thought that blue was neutrality, like something that wasn't an active player, and then red was like things that have action. So when Einstein's building the machine, he's just kind of passively building it, and the machine is what's making it happen. The Oppenheimer, like the evil one, is the red one, and he's the one moving the story forward.
I felt like
red.
it
I thought it was more like a positive and negative because
I was trying to track it to positive and negative.
The book that they're showing. Who is this? Fine. No, it's
the general.
The general, yeah, the book that they're having him read from in Hebrew, and that the book is red and everything else is blue. I don't know. I just thought it was
that
interesting.
could mean the book isn't a good thing. I mean, that's what I viewed it as. Like the machine that he puts together is red, and I took that as like the machine is bad. I don't know. That's to me. That's maybe I'm simplifying it, but I that's what I got.
Like, I'm looking at an issue and Hitler is there and he's blue, but the flower he's holding is red.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's actually an issue, or I'm actually looking at issue 6, but I mean, I'm not going to talk about anything that happens, but there's a guy and he's blue, but his glasses are red. And like, he's red in one panel, but then he's blue in the next panel. Like, I could not figure out what the metaphor was.
I wonder if it may be just a narrative device and the color is just there to provide contrast, which kind of...
Yeah, I prefer it to the black and white. Like, I think that it's more interesting than just like a black and white or a sepia.
It was another thing with this book where it's like, I get that you're doing a thing, but I have no idea where you're going with that
or
thing.
why
But doesn't that make you want to keep reading?
No.
Why?
I mean, it does at first, but after a certain point, I'm just like, it's like Lost. Like,
well, I'm going to be the first one to admit that I didn't finish the series because it just kept doing exactly that. Where it's like, there's nothing happening.
Well, and that's the thing.
That's exactly how I feel about it. It's like they set up a thing.
Yeah.
And then they just kind of forget about that thing and they go on to another thing, and that thing never gets resolved. And it like every single episode, it ends where you feel like something is about to happen, and then it doesn't.
I don't
have that experience with this book because at the end of every issue, I'm like, oh shit, what's gonna happen next? And then like a new thing happens. I'm like, oh cool. Like
I did not have that reaction.
And some of my questions are answered. And then Lost, I felt like that was not the case with what I saw. But
I wonder if I may have had that for the first couple of issues. I think I just don't have a great tolerance for that because I know, well, and maybe saying I know is too strong a statement. I suspect from past experience that when you have a bunch of threads like waving in the breeze, it's incredibly hard to tie them all up. And I'm not saying that, like, I'm not fucking comic book guy from The Simpsons going, oh, but in this issue you brought this point up and you never fucking came to, you know, like, I'm not doing that. But, like, using Lost as an example, you know, they answer the polar bear thing, but you never find out about a great many other things like the Black Mist and all that.
Well, I don't want to get into Lost.
Well, but I'm just using that as an example because it's handy. Like, I didn't read enough of this to be able to make an example of this, but I can see it happening.
Well, what I think about this, though, is having read Hickman's other work, I think if anyone can keep track of all those threads, It's Hickman, because I feel like he goes into something with a plan, and because he came at this from... I mean, this is an indie work, but because he came at writing comics from an indie work where he wrote works that had beginning, middles, and ends, and were complete, like, he does a great job of tying everything up, and so I have a great faith in him that I will understand what he's trying to tell me by the end, but I like his thesis. I think that what he's saying so far in this book is interesting.
What do you think he's saying?
Well, I think that what I was talking about earlier was that science, just because you can do something
doesn't mean you should.
And also, I think he's taken a really strong examination of the American military machine, which is like once it starts rolling, because if you know anything about our American foreign policy since 1945 when the war ended, like we have all this machinery in place to continue to be a war country, and that has to go somewhere. You can't just shut it all down. Like the machine's in place and it's rolling, and you can't really stop it. And so I think that it's really interesting to see where it goes and how that now that the ball is rolling, now that this machine is rolling and there's a shadow government in place and there's all this military technology and might happening, and now that they've met with interstellar races and they have the pulling travel technology that even some interstellar races don't have, like, what are they going to do with them? I have a huge question of why the Einstein that comes out of the door looks like Einstein, because at first I thought that was a doorway to a parallel universe. But now we find out that it's not. It's a doorway to
I thought it was a door
space.
I thought it could be used for either.
Well, I don't know.
I thought that was the whole thing, is that you could use it to go to alternate dimensions.
Yeah.
But no other alternate
Oppenheimer is
stuff.
talking about, like, I can go to an infinite number of realities.
And I think
like I can escape.
I think that whole
I think
thing
he said an infinite number of worlds, didn't he?
Maybe he did say worlds, but I guess I assumed because we had seen the other Albert Einstein that he was talking about worlds in the sense of like parallel realities.
But I don't know that. I think that now that the Einstein that may have come through could be like some shape-shifting alien Einstein. Like I just like there's questions I want to know.
And I just can't bring myself to care. I've read other Hickman things, and I know he's the master of like the slow build. But reading those other things, like I felt like he was building towards something, and reading this, I can't figure out what he's building towards. I feel like somebody's throwing all of these things at me, and I have no context for them. Like, I have no way to arrange them. It's like somebody is saying to me, like, I want you to read this 100-page textbook full of charts and diagrams and equations. And once you've read all of that, then I'm going to tell you what the significance of those things are and how all the pieces fit together. And I feel like you need to go, no, tell me first, like, why is it important that I know about these things? What is the context for them, and how am I going to use them?
But I think your curiosity should be what is that, because like if every time I looked at a chart in that book that they the metaphoric book that they handed me, I would go, oh, how am I going to use this later? And my puzzle solving side of my brain would want to understand how the
curiosity
thing works.
only takes you so far before you hit the point of just having no context.
I don't think that it does work like that for me, because I think that I'm just like infinitely curious about stuff to the point where I'll spend hours and days reading. Well, with the exception of you talking about math, like with reading articles on Wikipedia, like history does that to me. Like I am like, and then who did this? And what happened?
Wikipedia science is super interesting, but real science that's the basis of our reality, that's boring.
Well, you talking about you
guys are fucking boring.
Number of Fibonacci, infinite number of Fibonacci primes and whatever.
Which, for the record, was actually a conversation we had a couple weeks ago.
And I was there and I was dying on the inside. And I do like history more than I like science. And this isn't about science to me. And I agree with you. There's not a great number of scientific things happening here. It's about historical people that do science off panel.
And
like,
that's
this is an alternate history story, and I love alternate history
I will
stories.
admit that S.H.I.E.L.D. was more science-y. S.H.I.E.L.D. was definitely more rooted in the science.
I love that there's like an AI Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and like what he says to Feynman when he's like, there are 3 imposters in the War Department, and you know of 2. because they told you two
Yeah.
of them. They told you Oppenheimer
I
and,
will have to say this.
Einstein, and you're like, I wonder who the third one is. Like, I wonder. Like, I have wonder when I read this book. And
I think I've brought this up before, but there was actually, and I can't blame the book for it because it's totally me, but this book had one strike against it right in chapter 1 because the whole I've been killed and replaced by my exact double is my least favorite trope. I fucking despise it. I have literally never seen it done well, and it will kill. Like, I
actually
turned off
liked that in this
Galactica. I turned off Battlestar Galactica after like 3 episodes because I was like, fuck this. They're going to do this whole milking, like, who's real, who's not, and I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it.
That was one of the best parts of the show.
I hate the evil psychopath trope.
Yeah, and that's the other thing I hate.
But
So it was like a twofer.
The first strike that this comic had against it, as far as I'm concerned, was on page 3, the full page shot of the general, where the art is just ridiculously janky. Like the lines are just all kind of scribbly, and he's kind of like off center.
I like it.
I love it.
Like, it
I love
honestly
it.
makes me
Charming.
feel a little bit ill looking at this page because he just looks wrong. Like, his one arm is just not the right size at all, and his head is too small for his body.
It's
like,
dead.
Well,
Just, I don't know.
it's a
Weird.
POV shot. I mean, I think it's supposed to be a little.
It's supposed to imply like the foreshortening.
Yeah,
is
there's supposed to be
imply-
foreshortening, but it doesn't look right.
I don't know. I love the art in this book. I think that it's like the most impressive thing going on in this book. Like, I really like the writing, and I'm interested to see what happens next, and I want to know where it's going. But I love looking at every new panel that happens.
I did not mind the art at all.
Like, I
enjoyed
really wanted to appreciate this book, and I wanted to get into it, and I kept going, give me something to grab hold of. And I never got that thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just willing to work for stuff more. Like, I think that's why. No, I think it's why I like Infinite Crisis, and you guys didn't like it, is because like I'm willing to dig into a work and go, I trust you.
I think that there are things in a work that you are willing to, and I think that you're willing to invest yourself in works for different reasons than I am, and I'm definitely willing to do that for different reasons than Toby is.
Well, I mean, we all are willing to do different
and it's
things,
just
but...
it really comes down to it's a very similar conversation that we had to, at least for me, about Infinite Crisis, which is that, or not Infinite Crisis, I'm sorry, Identity Crisis, which is that sometimes a book's just is going to hit buttons for you that make you go sour on it, and then it's and we talk about, me and Chari talk about this a lot too. I think most works, I don't think there's really anything. Like, I don't think there's a such thing as a perfect work except for Transmetropolitan and
even
Jamie Hernandez.
I don't agree with that.
Jamie Hernandez Loca stories, at least the original run, I think are pretty goddamn perfect. But the thing is that it's all about what, and I'll agree, like, Transmet isn't perfect, right? But it's all about what you're willing to forgive.
Yeah.
Like, in a work, it's all about, I will forgive this because of all this I get in return. And then, you know, a lot of the times for me, it's like, I'm not willing to forgive that because I didn't get enough in return. And so that's kind of what it is for me. Is like, this book just hits all my bad buttons and none of my good ones.
And it hits a lot of my good ones because I love, like, meta science and weird shit.
Yeah,
like, the minute they were like, Death Buddhas, and then the samurai robots came through, I was like, well, I'm hooked on this book forever.
See, I feel like I really don't like that, because the thing that this reminded me of that I also didn't like was the Five Fists of Science,
which you're wrong on, and you're also an awful person for
like.
not liking.
I think that there's kind of a subgenre of over-the-top historical scientist fiction.
Well, yeah, no, I agree that exists.
The thing that fucking annoys the shit out of me about that is that you'll fucking sit there and tell me that Tesla in a time suit being chased by the father of fucking Iron Man and Mr. Fantastic is really compelling shit, but you don't like Tesla building a giant steam-powered robot
with Mark Twain.
With Mark Twain to defeat fucking Edison and his necromancer.
I think partially it's the historical context.
You don't like Atomic Robot?
But no.
That's exactly what I didn't like.
He's talking about S.H.I.E.L.D. and Five Fists of Science.
Oh, there's a different... Okay, I was like, that sounded like
no,
Atomic
in S.H.I.E.L.D., Nikolai Tesla is a time-traveling cyborg.
Too.
Man. See, I'm a big history buff myself, and so to me, like, other than the character study part, it's also like, it's an alternate reality version of what happened? Like, what if the atomic, or, what if all this, the Manhattan Project's just, it was like the X-Files or something, and it just, that's what, to me, that's what it was. It was like, basically, like, so I was like, I was sold.
Me too.
Just different strokes for different folks.
Yeah, I love alternate reality
I think that there's a level of somebody basically taking a thing, dialing it up to 11, and going, look at how over the top this is. And I go, well, that's not interesting because you didn't work for it. You just said a bunch of stuff.
I just think that
like Death Power, or was it
Death Buddhas,
Zen
Death Buddhas.
Like, you just said a bunch of words, and you're expecting me to think
awesome
that's cool.
Words.
Yeah, but that doesn't work for me.
I mean,
it's just like when you show me something that's really cool that no one has said those words in that combination in a book before. Like,
I said those
like
words in
that
1997
because I feel like so much of what we read today in comics is like same bullshit. When it's like superpowered man punches other superpowered man, it's like, yeah, I've read this before, I've seen this before. It's why I get tired of mainstream comics, is because
absolutely, but
there's not enough shit like this happening everywhere.
I don't necessarily think novelty, like.
I think novelty.
Yeah, I mean, I
helps
think that's exactly the word,
but,
is novelty.
Yeah,
like,
and I think that
just being novel isn't enough.
I would.
No, it's not enough.
You have to do something.
Well, yeah, and a great writer has to be
I feel like
there.
these comics, to a certain extent, are going, I just came up with something novel, and I want approval for it.
Well,
it's like, you didn't earn that. You just said a thing.
One of my favorite
and you didn't do
scenes
anything with it.
Ever in a show that I keep coming back to and being like, this is the kind of stuff I want in more fiction, is in Venture Brothers, Season 1, Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Magic is the name of the episode. It's the first introduction of Dr. Orpheus.
Yeah,
and Brock goes into the machine that gives you whatever you want, and he fights like a million ninjas and like all this crazy shit. And then at some point, a polar bear driving a motorcycle with a scuba guy in the sidecar who is firing a machine gun drives by. And I go, that is awesome. I want more of that. Like, that's awesome. And then there's a cowboy on a dinosaur with a flamethrower.
They've already established Brock as this over-the-top, macho, kick-ass secret agent at that point, and that's why that is so cool.
Well, yeah,
if you had come right out of the gate with that...
No, I still would have loved that.
I would not have loved it. Like, the great thing about Venture Brother is that it's this brilliant satire of this shit that was like really popular, that
but it's
certain audience
it's an
can still
exaggeration of that.
But
like,
it's an exaggeration.
Johnny Quest
of
was
that.
never that insane.
No,
like Johnny Quest was so much more mundane than that. And the the
don't
Hardy
talk
Boys.
shit about Johnny Quest.
I have a Johnny Quest cover over there. I love Johnny Quest.
Oh, JQ's my boy. I think I would have been much more interested in this had you been viewing it through the scope of somebody that was like a fictional character created just for...
And that's fair, because I like I really like the trope of like, you have all these historical characters, but then there's a guy who's meeting them for the first time.
Yeah.
Because I have all this context when I hear the names Oppenheimer and Einstein and, I know...
Fermi.
Yeah, I know stuff.
Feynman's one of my favorite.
And I know stuff, and that changes my opinion of them. And so if I met them through the lens of a guy who doesn't know them and is like being introduced to them, I think that works really well. So I think that's fair. I think it's a fair critique of the work. But I really just like seeing something I've never seen before and going, why is that there? And then they tell me why it's there. And I go, oh, okay.
And I don't necessarily know that that's... I think that it has to be done in a certain way to be satisfying, though. Like, I don't necessarily want answers right away.
No.
I mean, and it's one of those things where it's like, you can't... For me, I can't say one or the other because it depends so much on the work. Like, there are times when
I don't need answers right away, but I want to know what the questions are.
And I think it's not about answers, it's about coherence.
Well, and I think a lot of Hickman's work, you have to imply a lot from it. The first 2 times I read Red Mask for Mars, I was like, I don't know what I'm reading. Like, I read it like several times before I was like, oh, that's what this is supposed to be about. Because I just wasn't... The first time I read it was just in single issues, and it was too fast, and I wasn't really paying attention as closely as I should be. But that's what I feel like Hickman requires you to imply more.
Infer.
Like, infer.
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to lay it all out.
He implies, you infer.
I infer. That's correct.
God, that makes me think of DOA with Dennis Quaid and Meg Ryan.
I don't want to talk about that movie.
Obscure movie reference for the evening.
What I think is that Hickman does this thing where he forces you to infer points about the plot and about what's happening. And if you're willing to do that as a reader, I think you'll enjoy it. But if you're not willing to do that, I can understand where it wouldn't, like, things may not grab you in the same way.
That's fine, but I need at least enough material to be able to infer something.
Or to
like, I just feel like there's
stuff
stuff going on. It's like one of those pictures where it just looks like a bunch of blobs and it makes no sense, and somebody's like, oh, it's a cow. And it's like, oh my god, now I can only see the cow.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I can't see the noise that I saw before.
Right.
And, like, when I read this, I feel like I'm looking at a bunch of noise, and I know that there's got to be a picture there, but I can't see it. Like, I don't have I don't have the context.
Yeah.
But, like, a million years ago, Cade started to say that he hated two things about this, and he only told us one of them.
I love Cade's hate. It's, like, delicious.
Well, no, and I didn't hate this book, and that's the thing, is I did hate S.H.I.E.L.D. I didn't hate this. I just didn't care about this enough.
Fair.
Okay, so the other thing was, and this is why I was going to say, it might not be a case of same face as much as it is there was a lot of jumping around, like, between times, and you never really could tell what was in the past and what was in the present, so sometimes you would see... And I know of one instance of this where you saw Oppenheimer as he is now, and then Oppenheimer back with a little bit longer hair, and it was kind of confusing. I didn't know at first if it was...
I think that everything that is colored is taking place in real time, and only the flashbacks are only in blue and red.
Okay, I didn't get that.
That's
at
how I
all.
read it. I don't know if that's true, but that's how I read it.
Yeah, and this was also one of my problems with S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, is that it just had so much jumping around, it was disorienting, and it was very confusing, and that pulled me out to the point where I just didn't care. I finished the book, and I just had no inclination to go further. Like, apparently the rest of you did.
No, I didn't. I was right there.
If I had just been reading it for my own pleasure, I would have given up on it. I read the second volume because I felt like there was something that I was missing that eventually I would get the context for, and then I would be able to go back and say retroactively, like, I had problems with the first 5 issues, but then at this point, everything became clear, and now I think it's good.
And I think this is interesting.
And maybe it's issue 11 where that happens, and I don't know. But
I'm still reading
now
this.
I don't care enough to find out.
I did want to mention the way that they kill the alien race. I was very intrigued with.
Oh, that was awesome.
Because, you think about the way that the guy's death head works, and you start really thinking about it, like, okay, so the one guy had a broken helmet, and so...
Oh, I love that caption bubble that comes up. He's like, are you okay? And he's like, I'm fine. And then the caption says, I'm dead. And you're like, what? And then you turn the page and you realize why. Like, I thought that scene was so well laid out and just, like, happened so well that when you see him, talking to the general, and he's like, well, will he be okay with this? And he's like, you don't give him the choice. And you see him break his helmet and then die. It's like, oh my god! Like, I thought that scene was awesome, like, excellently written.
Yeah, I mean, when he smashed the helmet off the death head guy,
Joe and Toby are shrugging because they don't care.
I thought it was okay.
I mean,
how is that not awesome?
The problem that I had with it was not the
totally
plan that they had to kill everybody. Like, I thought that was cool.
I didn't even realize that was a plan. I thought that they were just coming up with that on the spot.
The problem that I had is, okay, you're talking about a universe where Earth has this, like, basically a wormhole, a warp gate or whatever.
Well, Einstein built this portal.
And other people have them, obviously, because the aliens know what it is.
Yeah.
Like, they know that they have one and they want it. The pulling way.
Yeah.
If your race is designed in such a way where you kill one room full of people and the entire species dies, and you're this, like, militaristic expansionist race, why has anyone else not done exactly that thing?
Well, they have these massive
just shoved a nuclear bomb through a pulling way into that room and just killed everyone.
There's also the scene in which Oppenheimer is telling them that they want the pulling way, and that's why they're coming to Earth.
That nobody else has a pulling way, or one hasn't been seen for a really long time.
And then the alien that's inside Oppenheimer's head says he's lying. I think the reason that the aliens are there is for atomic power. and the other races in space don't have atomic power.
That seemed weird and implausible.
I think they're there specifically for the pulling way.
Yeah.
But the thing that bothers me about it is that these are fucking scientists. They're not mercenaries. Right? Like, they act like fucking mercenaries. They're running around killing people.
But they're war scientists.
But that's the thing. Like, it's like that...
They're building weapons.
Like, it's not...
Actually,
you're using scientists to tell this story, but you're treating them as if they're soldiers, which it creates this huge disconnect for me. Like,
it feels... I get what you're saying, Joe. It feels more like they're... instead of trying to learn things like scientists...
Yeah, which is what a scientist would do. That's why you're a fucking scientist, because you're curious.
Yeah, instead of trying to learn things, they're following somebody else's orders and...
Yeah, which...
First of all, there's only 2 scientists on the team now.
But there's...
Because Oppenheimer is not a scientist.
He is a student.
No.
He is...
Because he ate his brother. The scientist Oppenheimer's dead. This is a non-scientist Oppenheimer. And then...
Yes, but he learned some things by eating him.
Yeah, but he doesn't think like a scientist. He thinks like a sociopathic murderer cannibal.
But you've got Einstein.
Einstein, who's not the real Einstein. We don't know who that is. We know nothing about that Einstein.
Okay, well, yes.
He's not a scientist.
But the other people...
the thing is that everybody that goes to see the aliens, like Fermi and the other dude...
the guy with the skull head is no longer human and is now thinking... You see the scene where he is being fed the atomic energy? And I think that, like, he's very analogous to Dr. Manhattan to me, where he no longer thinks about humans in the same way, because his half-life now is, like, 24,000 years.
24,000 years.
Yeah.
Well, he doesn't have to think about humans, but where's his yearning for knowledge gone? If I was immortal, I would try to learn every possible thing I could.
I don't know that he yearns for knowledge so much as he, like, yearns to eat radioactive material. Like, I don't know his motivation anymore. So
the thought that occurred to me early on was that we were basically seeing, like, the Star Trek mirror universe version. Like, it's like our world, but everybody's actually a huge dick and are trying to fuck each other over for power all the time. And that didn't really bear out. I mean, they all are kind of like that, but then, like, okay, well, it's not that Oppenheimer is a huge dick. He was replaced by his evil brother. The original Oppenheimer presumably was a good person.
Right, but this
same
new
thing
Oppenheimer
with same thing with Albert Einstein.
Right, exactly.
And I thought, it's like, okay, well, maybe this is our world, but the evil duplicates from the mirror universe or whatever are, like, taking them over or replacing them. But that didn't bear out either.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a combination of many different ideas like this.
I mean, again, like, I was trying to find my footing throughout the entire book, and I could never get it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
I don't know. I think I'm just along for the ride.
And that's cool. It's very hard for me to be... I can really... When I think back, there's definitely things I enjoy to, like, not know what's going on, but they have to be done in a very specific way for me to be, like, hanging on to it. Because otherwise I'm just... And I really think if it wasn't for a few things in here that maybe I would have been like, okay, well, I'm kind of interested to see what happens next. But I think that it wasn't just the fact that I never felt like I got my feet under me. It was like the whole being replaced with evil doubles. Everybody's a psychopath. Everybody's mission is only to kill. It's like and it's the end. If this had been about science, if this had been about, like, crazy, like... or, like, crazy meta-science in a world not bound by our rules of reality. Or if it had been more of an X-Files thing where you had, like, the scientists doing this crazy meta-science and then, like, and people that were actually dealing with the alien threat, a la Mulder and Scully. Like, both of those things sound a lot more interesting to me than this, where the scientists are the main plot point.
Well, they're also doing science off-panel a lot. Like, the guy with the robot arm who I love... the robot arm specifically. I love the robot arm's design, like how he draws that.
It's
Werner von
Braun.
Braun, yeah. Braun's arm, the design and the pencil or
Yeah, and
like
it's-
his design for that is amazing.
I
I love
like
that.
the character
But
designs for this too.
he's
It's-
building rockets off panel all the time because
Yeah.
they're always like, "Why haven't you broken out of atmospheric containment yet?" And he's
and I think
making
this,
excuses.
I
But-
think this gets down to like the main difference between you and me is that you're okay with things happening off panel, and especially in a comic
yeah,
book.
I really am.
Tell me and fucking show me it's a goddamn graphic work.
Yeah, I mean,
there's
all
no
you
reason
needed,
you
all
can't
you
take
needed to
one
do is
panel-
burn like one panel or one
panel,
page
one panel,
Yeah.
just
of
like this
them
is
like
happening.
launching a rocket.
Yeah, I
or
don't
like
need to see that.
put somebody in the background doing crazy science.
Well, there's
shit.
lots of people in the background doing crazy science.
Actually,
shit.
bunch
the
of-
thing that the other thing that this reminded me of is planetary, and it's not a favorable comparison for this book. Like, I feel like there are things that this does that planetary
Science.
did a lot better.
I just pointed at a panel and said, "Look, science."
It's like science, but it's like the main plot point. It's
well-
not Werner von Braun working
I know.
in the back
It's
on a
them
rocket,
making
you
an
know?
AI Truman, which is cool.
Uh,
but I
Not Truman, Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. Sorry,
Roosevelt, yeah.
Truman's the one that they bring in, the Masonic guy that they bring in after.
Yeah.
I like that they keep saying the line when he's talking in the flashback to Hitler was "I'll tell you honestly, Fuhrer, for me, there's only one thing of consequences, and that is the cause," which is just like, well, science. And then later when he gets captured, he says basically the same thing. We have nothing in common, and then he says, "But we do, the most important thing, and there's only one thing of consequence, Dr. Feynman, and that is the cause. See, the science is all that has ever mattered."
Yeah, but then
And I
they're,
like that. I think that's a-
slaughtered. There's very little in this for me to. This is not about science; it's about conquest.
Yeah, with
And
science.
that's the thing,
The
like-
conquest of science.
But that's about
In-
conquest, not science.
in a country that is a mechanized war machine.
Yeah, but it's not
See,
about the
now-
mechanized war machine; it's about the scientists.
Now I want to see Andrew Chard write a comic book called Science Conquistadors.
oh my God, yes!
I'd write
Let's do
that.
it. Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm not a writer, you guys.
And
And
I
there
will write-
is a giant robotic oh God, what's his name now? I can't remember.
Cortez?
Not Cortez, it's the other guy. Maybe it was Cortez.
Cortez conquered like the Aztecs and the Incas, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm trying
You're
to
thinking of Da Gama?
maybe I am.
He was the Fountain of Youth guy, or Pizarro. He was
Pizarro. I'm thinking
Okay.
of Pizarro.
Seven Cities of Gold.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, I was thinking of the Mysterious Cities of Gold, and I didn't want to say the villain from the Mysterious Cities of Gold because I felt like that would be
Similar.
nerdy.
the high school where I
Although
grew
that
up.
cartoon was incredible.
What
don't
was
know,
it?
which one?
El Dorado.
The Mysterious Cities of Gold.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, you know it. Dude, the soundtrack
I-
to that. Oh my God, the soundtrack to that cartoon was incredible.
How
So
have I not
good.
seen
Like,
that?
I only vaguely remember this. This is from like
This
20
was
years
this is
ago.
a co-produced French and Japanese cartoon
How
from
have I
the
not
early
seen this?
'80s.
Yeah,
about
it's very
like
strange.
oh God, I don't want to reveal the twist.
Okay.
There's a
I'm
twist.
going to watch it now, though. I didn't even know this.
And there was actually just a sequel that came out like 2 years ago.
I'm going to watch it now. I'm excited. Everyone
good.
else listening should go watch it, too.
Yeah, no,
You should at
that's
least
so
go to
weird
go to
because
YouTube and watch the opening.
It's one of those things that I get stuck in my head, that theme song, but I didn't know that anybody else had ever like that. In Danger Mouse, I sometimes wonder if we're real because literally I can count on one hand the amount of people I've actually heard mention them that I know are not figments of my imagination.
What was this show called?
The Mysterious Cities of Gold.
Yeah.
Go look it up and watch it.
And the only
everybody.
thing I remember from it is the theme song.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Eric, you look like you had something to say just a second ago.
Hopefully about the Mysterious Cities of
Cities
Gold.
of Gold.
Because
Never
that is
seen
way
it.
better than this comic book.
See, I mean, I liked it, so
Yeah,
I don't know. I
want
don't know.
Eric
like
to tell
that.
me more.
I mean,
about
I'm
what he
not
liked
the
about
you're
it.
wrong type because it's your opinion and you're
No,
allowed
dude,
to have
if,
it.
if you think that we're wrong,
No.
if you have a counter opinion, please
You
express
should.
it.
You obviously don't listen to this podcast enough because
Oh, I've listened to every
about,
episode. I've listened
it's
to it
all
every time.
about fuck you. You're wrong,
Oh, I
and
know.
you're a bad person.
I would like to point out
that is
like
the
the
Joe
first
perspective.
5 episodes I was on, everybody loved the book.
That did happen for a while.
And I think it's very. I think it's
we have very different taste
rare
in books.
that-
That's what I think.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. It
No, I
makes
think
for some
that's-
interesting conversations.
I'm totally willing for other people to have their own opinions and their own perspectives on things, but I think that you should fight to the hilt for why you are right.
Well, no, I
Well, to me,
agree.
it's opinion, though. Like, for me, I like it because it's historical fiction.
Yeah.
I like it because of that. And if you don't, that's 100% valid.
No, that's a legitimate point. Like,
It's different strokes for different folks.
Like, if just the fact, like, hey, it's historical fiction, I like that.
And that's something I like. I'm a big
cool.
history guy. See, in school, like, science and math are my weak areas. I don't like them. I don't enjoy them at all. Writing in history, as far as, like, tests and the classes I took, things like that, those are my interests. So that's where my brain is, and that's the things I find exciting. Honestly, I think maybe that's just where our divide is. And if that's true, that's 100% fine. You know, that's totally fine.
And I think
I actually.
go ahead, Cade.
Oh, I was just about to say, Mannix. I actually am, or I'm. Bleh, my brain just went to jelly. I'm actually a big fan of historical fiction books, especially like when they change like one detail and the entire thing changes.
Oh yeah, I love that.
That show Sliders, I love.
Oh, I love that show, yeah.
Because, you know, every episode it was like, oh, well, it's the exact same except back in 1957 this happened instead of this, and now the whole world is different.
A huge fan of the like infinite
Quantum
multiple
Leap
universe
too is another one I really
theory.
enjoyed. That kind of
Quantum Leap was great, except for the fucking ending to that series.
I don't
God.
remember it. It's been like
Fuck
a
the
billion
ending.
years.
Don't think about it. Don't try to remember.
Yeah, you're better off not
I haven't seen it in a
remembering.
billion years.
God, I was like 11 or 12, and it was I think the first time I ever experienced nerd rage.
I saw bits and pieces of it, and I never saw the ending. And then when I was in college, I was talking to Brant. He's like, "Oh, the ending was so bad," and he told me what it was, and I was like, "That doesn't seem so bad." And then the Sci-Fi Channel was showing that show at a time where, like, I would get out of class and I would go home and watch it.
Yeah.
And so I saw the whole thing all the way through to the end. And the last episode came on, and I flipped my shit because that ending was so bad.
It was it was awful.
All I remember about
awful.
that show was my mom really liked it. I think
I
Well,
loved
it was
that
basically
show.
it was sci-fi touched by an angel.
Yeah, but much better because of fucking Bakula, man.
Well, yeah, he did the Bakula kick.
Yeah,
it was great.
He's so cool.
My dad looks like Scott Bakula, so I'll always love everything that has Bakula
Did your dad
in
have
it.
red hair too?
No.
Oh man.
Scott Bakula doesn't have red hair.
No, but
Cade
Cade
Oh,
does.
Gabe does. Yes, he does.
So, is
Sure.
there anything else that we wanted to say about?
I did want to
Manhattan
talk
Projects?
about the way that we express our opinions on the show, and I think it's worth noting because oftentimes when people are talking about a book, they don't say, "Well, I liked it," or I didn't like
Right,
it.
no.
People often say like it's bad or it's good, but unlike
And I've been making a point to say, like, either, like, I felt this, I didn't feel this.
Well, and I think that it's so common in our culture of like internet commenting that
to
state that it is an opinion, you have to say IMO before it or IMHO, which is bullshit because you should never have to say that. Bothers me so much. You should never have to say that because everything that fucking comes out of your mouth, unless it's backed up by goddamn written fact, is an opinion.
Absolutely.
So if you go, "You're a dumbass," that's an opinion. You don't have to say IMO before that. You just
Here's my
said an
citations,
opinion.
motherfucker.
And you don't have any fucking fact to back that up. And that's what bothers me about a lot of like art like this is because it is art, like the written work is an art form, and there's no quantifiable measurement. We can't be like, oh, this is 420 nanoquarks good. Like, there's no way to measure that.
Wait, who told you?
If I
about
ever
my
write a book, can you
nanoquark
put that on the
system?
back? It's 420 nanoquarks.
Yeah, I will definitely. I'll put that on the back. But there's no way to that's why coming up with a top 10 list is so difficult because you can't just look at your data and go, oh, well, this one is, 10 clicks higher than that one. There's no
absolutely.
way to do that. And the only thing that we have for that is sales and people who experienced it. But those don't really mean anything. And so
No.
I think that
People
expressing
buy Mark Millar books. So.
yeah, it's different strokes for different folks,
that's
man.
what's up.
And so I think that it's important when we talk about our opinions to be like, well, why don't you think it's good, and why do you think it's good? And that's why I like this show. That's why I like doing this kind of stuff. I think it's important.
You know what's actually really interesting to me about that is it makes me think of describing colors to blind people.
Oh, absolutely.
And you have to describe it in the sense well, red is kind of hot, but it's also energetic.
I read something or saw something lately.
When we're talking about whether things are good, and I was trying to think, it was well, we don't have a sense of, and then the word after that was taste. But taste is also, that's something that you do with your tongue.
Right.
We do not have a word to describe, what makes something good and bad in an objective way. Like, we have no sense that gives us that. All we can do is describe these things in reference to other things. Like, you would describe a color to a blind person in reference to other things.
I read something recently, or saw something, I can't remember what it was now, but someone's like, well, how does that, one character says, like, well, how does that work? And the other character is like, describe blue.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, like, no way.
Was it Deadly Class? I think it was Deadly Class.
Yeah, we read that the other day.
Yeah, you've come back from the dead or something like that. And it's a book where someone got resurrected, and it was like, what was death like? And it's like, it was something to that effect.
Yeah, describe blue. And it was like, that very often is how I feel about when I'm critiquing a work.
And like, when we talk about things like that, it's like, well, this wasn't to my taste, or I don't like this particular flavor of comic. Like, we're using other sensual words to describe our feelings about the thing.
And you can never tell if you're going to like it or not based on someone else's telling you.
No,
because
absolutely not.
we were talking about this overhyping. Joe and I were talking about when things get overhyped the other day. Because like someone can come up to you and be like, oh, that's great. That colors your approach to the work now.
Absolutely.
Because someone has told you it's good.
We were talking about Pitch Black,
Pitch Black,
which
I
ruined
love.
for me by a couple friends that came and I was working, and they stopped by after they went to the movies because I worked in the same like strip mall, and they talked it up for like 15, 20 minutes, and I went and saw it, and I like actively did not like it because I went in with an expectation of 10.
Yeah.
When really the beautiful thing about Pitch Black was that nobody knew anything about it. So you walked into the theater having no idea of what you were going to see.
Well, and I really
One
think
of my
that's
favorite movies.
Yeah, I'm really like, I was angry at them because I blamed them for that. Because
Well, it actually happened to me with The Matrix. I walked into that thing blind, like the first week it came out, before there was any hype.
The Matrix is the only movie ever that has lived up to the hype.
I think that is one of my favorite ways to approach any fiction at all, is to know absolutely nothing. It bothers me on Netflix when they put a description of the thing. Like, that's how little I want to know about it before I watch it. Is like, I just want to see the name and go, oh, I'll check this, and who's in it, and go, I'll check this out, and be like, or who directed it, and be like, I've liked their other stuff, I'll try this.
There is a very, very short list of people where if they say, I want you to see this thing, and I don't want you to know anything about it beforehand, that I would trust them enough to do that.
Yeah, I think I love to experience things that way. So I hope that people that listen to this like don't take our pitches too strongly. But I think that's one of the reasons why I like that we do a play along show, and I hope that people play along and actually read the book before we talk about it, because I like it being able to form your own opinions about it.
And I think we're really good about. I have really actively tried to be less to separate out when I don't like something, as opposed to me not thinking that a work is good. And I think much more of the time I find that
but I don't
like. Well, I think that there is a certain, like, if I think the art is really terrible, or if I think the story is like, I think we could all agree that Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose is not a good book.
But that's our
one
opinion.
of my favorites.
No, it totally is. It totally
that
is
might
our
hit
opinion.
everybody's. I dated a girl
I've
who
never
loved
read
that
it.
book because it had all the things that she loves in it, like
Haunted
boobies, haunted vaginas, and tarot. Like a lot of stuff that she was really into.
Well, let me put it this way.
I think that things being good and bad and you liking or not liking things are two distinct things that both exist.
I don't know.
Yes. And I think what I'm trying to say is that if you asked me why I thought Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose was bad, I could give you a laundry list.
But that doesn't
of
mean that it
well-thought-out
is bad.
complaints. Well, no, it doesn't. But it means that
It means you didn't like it. That's all it means.
I bet you can name a bad movie. A fucking bad movie. The Room is a bad movie. I don't give a fuck who you are.
I love it.
But you love it because it's so bad.
That's the thing. It's like you can
it.
appreciate something that's bad. Like you can like something or dislike something, and it can be good or bad. And you can like something that is bad.
Abed says it on the second episode of the newest season of Community, where he's talking about Nick Cage, and he says Johnny Depp is good in a bad way, and fucking somebody else is bad. Jean-Claude Van Damme is bad in a good way. It's like, you can have this, right? Rambo 2 is bad, but in the best possible way.
I don't know, because I think that there is a difference between being poorly made, like something is technically not made well.
Yes.
Like, I think that, like, if they had used crayon to make this book, I would go, Well, it's not made very
Well,
well,
and that's what
it's
I'm talking
stapled
about.
together,
That's what
and it's
I'm
like
talking
it's
about.
not constructed very strongly. And if the panels were just confusing and scribbles, like I could easily say like, and in a film, I would use that analogous to like someone who doesn't understand how camera motion is supposed to work, and it makes you sick. And like, just there's a lot of things that technically about a film should be good, and sound design, like something that I
absolutely.
pay attention to a lot now.
And they're the same
see, I
criteria for
have-
comic books, I think.
But
I
that
have-
doesn't necessarily make the work unenjoyable. Like I might still enjoy.
No, no,
it.
no,
Right, no, you're 100% right about
Yeah,
that.
like,
but that's what I'm saying is
enjoyability-
that whether you like something or not, and whether it's good or not, are
Are
two
two
separate
separate
things.
criteria.
I think
that
that
both
line
exist.
is a lot fuzzier than people want to make it.
No, it
depends on
absolutely
what you're
is.
I
talking
think it's a
about,
very
but
gray
yeah.
area.
An opposite example would be is that I did not like the Kill Bill films. However, I do point out that they are very well made and good films. They're
Yeah.
just not my
They're his
taste.
best movies. After
I
Jackie
really
Brown.
didn't like Inception,
Yeah.
but I can see that it's a good movie.
I don't know that I would say that. I could say that it's a well-made movie, but I don't know that it's a good movie. If
I think
I
a
don't,
lot
if I don't
a
like
lot of
it.
people enjoyed it.
No, and I do enjoy it, but I was saying like if I
Because it's
don't
good.
like a film,
Well,
then
Toby also
can I
didn't like
say that
Blade
it's
Runner, though,
good?
so...
When did I not like Blade Runner?
You told me you didn't like Blade Runner. I remember this conversation
Uh-oh.
because
I
that
don't
was the
remember
first time
saying
I
that.
hated you for a little bit. For like 5 seconds after that conversation.
I don't like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep because that book is really bad.
Well, that's...
But the movie is a lot better.
I thought I remember you saying you didn't like it.
I feel like you got to be thinking of a different movie.
No.
Anyway.
Well, because you didn't like... I remember you specifically talking about how you didn't like the score.
That does not sound like something that I
I
would
swear
say.
to... No,
That
that was
doesn't-
you.
that actually
I
doesn't
swear to
sound
God
like
it was
Toby.
you. I swear to God it was you.
Who does not like slow jazz?
Well, it's
in the
not. It's
rain.
Vangelis. It's all like airy '80s, like electronic music. It's like Tangerine Dream.
Anyway, the reason I brought it up, the whole like
Yeah.
what we do on the show, opinion stuff, is
It's because we're right and they're all
It's
wrong.
because I really believe that line is very blurry between what is good and what is bad,
Joe, I think
and what is
my-
opinion and what isn't. And because we have like a overseeing a body of film, like the Oscar awards and the Academy Awards, but even when they award Best Picture, like I don't often agree.
Almost
Well,
always
and I-
wrong.
and it's-
And
and
Joe,
it's
I
wrong.
think that you have a secret agenda against our audience. You are like so ready to automatically assume
No,
that everybody who listens to us is
is-
out to get us.
I'm going to burst everybody's bubble out there, right? This is what is expected of me, right? This is the character I play on the podcast.
I don't
And
know.
I
That's
actually
the character
encourage
that you
people-
live in real life.
I encourage people, like, regardless of how fuzzy that line is, because I don't
Yeah.
think it's as fuzzy as you think it is, it would never...
Which
it
is
is
what makes
okay
it
to
so
like
fuzzy.
bad things. It is okay to like things that everybody else hates. It is okay to like things that are problematic. It's okay.
And it's
Like,
okay
that's
to
the
hate
thing,
something
right?
that everybody else seems to think
else
is good.
loves,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's fine. I think the reason we do this is because we want you to make up your own fucking mind.
Except for your
Well,
unnatural vendetta against the movie Avatar, Joe.
No, that's not unnatural, and it's perfectly founded.
I don't think anyone likes Avatar. The movie?
I thought that was good.
What? They whitewashed the
You're
cast. It was like,
quickly
I'm thinking of the
You're
Last
thinking of
Airbender.
Airbender.
No, Avatar sucked too. It was
Well,
Pocahontas.
Last
It was
Airbender was
horrible.
god-awful.
It was
It was
offensive,
bullshit.
and it was thoughtless, and it was pretty, but it does not
That
look
movie
as
was
good
beautiful.
Anyway.
It doesn't look as
and
good on
I
Blu-ray.
had
I hate
an
to tell you
amazing
that.
experience watching it.
That's valid, as much as I hate to fucking admit it.
The final thing that I wanted to say about that was the reason that I like doing the show is because I think that it is good for everyone to form their own opinion. And I
Absolutely.
don't want you to take what we say, because we never agree on a book, or almost never.
And if you listen to other fucking people and you get your other opinions in we do this because I do this because I want people to think about what they're
Exactly.
reading.
There's a problem, I think, with maybe my generation and definitely the generation that comes after, that is very much like they will see a work and they will say, was that supposed to be good? Or what am I supposed to think about that work? And they'll turn to alternative sources, whether it be like Pitchfork or, Rotten Tomatoes or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, well, it's got a 96%, it must be good. And it's like, that's bullshit. Like, you're the only one that can tell you if something's good or not is your own brain.
One of
Like,
my
you're
favorite
the
memories of
Old
all
Man
time.
Logan.
One of my best friends,
Old
he gets all of his album reviews from like Rolling Stone and crap like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't really have his own like opinion on some of this
Yeah.
stuff, and it cracks me up because then as his friend, like he'll ask me what I think of things, and he'll kind of thumb his nose at me, which is like, why would you ask? I mean, it's my
Yeah.
opinion. I don't care.
Right.
Like, I like what I like, and I don't feel the need to validate it. But like, why would you ask? And you're like, whatever. Like, you're dumb. Like, it's my opinion. I'm allowed to like what I like.
Yeah.
But it's funny because he got I think it was the first Kanye West album.
Oh,
And
College
he
Dropout, man.
hated it. He
Beautiful.
wanted it, and Rolling Stone loved it. So he was
Dude, it's
like,
so good.
he was cringing.
Oh,
'Cause he was
it's so
like,
good.
oh, it's supposed to be so good, and like he wanted to like it so much because Rolling Stone loved it so much. And I was like,
Yeah.
you know that, and it's like, and again, it's like maybe it's a great album, and it's just not your cup of tea. That's
Yeah.
100% fine.
And I think go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's just that was the main thing. And then again, like now that I podcast, here's the funny thing, because me being his friend, he never listened to me. Me working at a fucking comic book store, he never listened to me. Now that I podcast, he'll listen to the podcast and like he'll listen to my recommendations. What the fuck?
You have gravitas now.
No, like
Yeah.
we went out to IHOP the other day. and we
Journalist,
had coffee.
bitch.
No,
Yeah.
for real. Well, like, it's like apparently I have cred now because I'm on fucking iTunes. Like,
Yeah.
okay, because like, yeah, because
They let us on iTunes.
I know.
That's how little
Yeah,
it takes to be on
right?
iTunes.
Really?
They let us. What a horrible mistake they've made.
Yeah,
But it's-
I named my pig in Harvest Moon Ham Hock Jose. That's how much I fucking know.
well, it's rad though because yeah, he's always got some criticism on like everything that I do. And we were sitting there sipping our coffee at IHOP, and he was like, "Yeah, I like the show. It's really good." And I'm like, "Huh?" And like, it's good. I like it. Yeah, but I'm like waiting for the foot to
When
drop.
is the-
It's like, I'm like, wait, and I'm like, why do you like it? Oh, because like we act like we're authority figures and like we have opinions on things.
And
Like,
that's
and it blew my mind. I was like, is that all I needed to do the whole time? And the fact that we recorded it, because suddenly
Because it's out there
Because,
for
yeah,
everybody
Amy,
to
like
hear.
he's come
Yeah,
into
I'll
the
tell you.
shop now and bought shit that I
Hey,
recommended.
we're
I've known him for
from
17 years.
the internet
Yeah.
officially.
I've
Yeah,
known
you
him
are
for
officially
17
from the
years in
internet.
real life. He started listening
and
to
that's
me
the
like
thing.
3 months ago.
I hate the idea of being a critic. Like, I don't like that. Like, I think of this show as entertainment. You should listen to us hate each other and get entertainment from that.
Yeah, no-
I don't know
Oh,
that you
I
should
laugh
really.
hysterically
I don't know
when I
that you
listen.
should really draw any critical analysis
Yeah.
of
Well-
like the work because I want you to read it and think.
Yeah,
what do
you
you
should
think
read the
about it?
book
That's
and
what's
you
more
should
important.
make your own
Because there's my favorite Hemingway quote is. Critics are the ones that they're like the generals that command the battle from up on the hill and then walk down and shoot the survivors. I think that's the quote. It's something like that. And I've always loved that quote, and it always has made me like hate the idea of being a critic because I don't want to.
I consider myself an oppositional thinker. Like, I formulate my opinions the best when somebody says something and I go, no, fuck you, you're wrong, and here's why. And I want people listening to us to go, no, you guys are completely wrong.
Yeah, you
you
guys
got
are
that
wrong.
book, like, you totally misunderstood that. This is everything that's wrong with what you just said.
Yeah, well, and
It's
I think that
just-
discussion is the best way to help formulate your own ideas. But
And I believe a text is a conversation. And that is either a conversation you want to have or you don't want to have. But you don't know until you pick it up and engage with it. And that's just kind of the thing, right? Like when you let other people make your decisions for you. You know, on Pitchfork, they did their 2013 music survey. Kanye West's album Yeezus, best album of the year, most overrated album of the year, and most underrated album of the year. So if you can figure out a world structure wherein all three of those things make sense, then you let me know, because what that sounds to me is a bunch of people, a few people going, hey, I had these thoughts about this, and then a bunch of people going, well, that guy liked it, so that must be great, or that guy hated it, so it must be overrated. And that's kind of what you get. It's like a bunch of people jumping onto things without listening to
So
it.
well, that's the great thing about opinions is everybody's right.
Well, yeah.
And
I mean,
in that, judging on that, and I want to jump into recommendations before we sit here and talk
yeah,
about
because this
films.
is like the meta commentary.
I also want to jump into recommendations. Before we do that, though,
Yeah.
two things. First, what the fuck is Pitchfork?
Oh my god!
Don't worry, we're not getting into that discussion right now.
I've never heard of that before.
It's a music review
It's
website,
music
and
review.
they don't know fucking shit
They're
Two,
about anything.
hipsters love it.
our listenership numbers have been tracking up, especially with episode 50. So I'm
Yay.
sure we've got a bunch of new people listening to the show. So I just wanted to re-announce and remind anybody who has been listening to the show that our next episode of The Long Run, our semi-monthly, every 2 or 3 months,
yeah.
bonus show where we talk about an entire long run in a series or entire series. The next episode of that is going to be coming up in probably 2
A week
or
to 2
3
weeks.
weeks.
Oh, damn.
2 weeks.
2
yeah.
weeks.
I'm glad I started reading it.
Yeah.
So what we're reading for this episode is Pluto by what's his first name?
Urasawa is his last. It's
something Urasawa.
It is.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you search for Pluto by Urasawa, you'll find it. It's a 7-volume manga series.
You could also search for, I believe, Pluto, the World's Strongest Robot.
Yeah, it's loosely based on the Astro Boy story, The World's Greatest Robot.
Yeah.
Told from a completely different character's perspective.
Yeah, it was done for the 75th anniversary of Astro Boy.
So if you want to listen to that episode of The Long Run in a couple of weeks, start reading Pluto.
Yeah, It's really good. It's like if you like Blade Runner and Silence of the Lambs.
It's about a robot detective.
Detectives.
It's interesting.
It's cool.
It is. I look forward to talking about it.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So
all right,
recommendations.
I'm going to spring into recommendations.
Yeah,
I'm
first.
I'm going to snag the first spot.
Do it.
So this is a book that I started talking about on a previous podcast. Hadn't read it and decided to scrap it, but I read it, at least the first part of it, and it charmed my fucking pants off, and so I'm totally sold on it. I brought Hopeless Savages, and this is the greatest hits 2000-2010. It's all written by Jen Van Meter, who I believe is
It's Greg
Rucka's wife, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to double check. And it's illustrated by Brian Lee O'Malley and a bunch of other people. And it's basically about a punk couple that were huge, and then they kind of retired and had a family, and they named all their kids like these really great names like Rat and Twitch and Skank Zero. And it's basically, the first arc is kind of like Skank Zero is practicing her guitar, and her parents get kidnapped, and so she gathers up all her siblings and they go and find them. And like, I'm serious, this is the most fun I've had reading a comic book in a while. It's just, she's got her own language. Like, I think sometimes in kind of an all ages title, they kind of tone down the language, so sometimes it kind of feels artificial. But Skank is like using this weird kind of British slang to curse, but it's all just made up anyways, and it's hilarious. Like, the characters, especially her, have so much personality, and
your daughter's gonna be mad at you for saying.
Yeah, I was just about to say that.
Especially, you know what? Audrey doesn't listen to the podcast, and she can.
Well, she's not allowed to.
No, she does. Yeah, it's true. She's already opinionated enough. Jesus, but no, she was absolutely. She's been bugging me to read this for a while, and she's been very angry at me for not. And I'm now reading it. I am upset.
And she wants to be on the podcast if we talk about it.
Yeah, she does, which would be very cool. But it's so much fun, and they do this great thing because this book also has flashbacks. But the art for the main style is very kind of clean, very Western. And I love the art, but the flashbacks are all in this very manga style, which give it this very great kind of like dreamy feel. And it's just charming as hell.
Okay,
like,
I cannot remember this at all, but I feel like I've read it.
I mean,
maybe I must have started it.
And there's an issue that was a free comic book day comic, so
Maybe
it's
that was
possible that you picked it up there. I actually think the first issue of the second story was the free comic book day story, but it might have just been like a compilation. But it's just a lot of fun. And it's like I said, it's really charming. It's got a lot of heart, and the characters are great. And it's got this very great, like, punky feel. And there's really nothing I didn't like about it. It doesn't take itself too seriously. Very much in the vein of, like, Scott Pilgrim, where it's kind of like, it's like happening here, but with slightly different rules. So it's almost like the Sex Pistols meet.
I've heard Scott Pilgrim described as video game realism.
Yes,
in contrast to magical realism.
Yeah, and I think it's very
punk
very
realism.
similar to that. Punk realism, yes. It's got the same kind of, it's got very similar like fantastical elements as one of our favorite shows, Gem and the Holograms.
Gem and the Holograms.
Show favorite,
which is,
Gem and the Holograms.
Gem and the Holograms. And it's all about Stormer. It's really all about Stormer.
It is.
Well,
and Kimber.
Well, Gem's truly outrageous.
She is truly, truly, truly outrageous.
I'm outraged.
No, it's amazing.
All right, Eric, what do you got this week?
I brought Darkwing Duck.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna get one of my books on the show. This is me, Tim. Let me tell you. All right, Kaboom, Boom's children's label. I tend to not like licensed things. I'm kind of a snob. I usually just if it's like He-Man or whatever it is. If it's
wrong. They look wrong.
Usually they do, and I'll admit, I think I'm too good for it, so I don't even try them normally. Because when I was a kid, I would try some, and I was burned. So maybe that's why. But this one I kept hearing good things about. I went to Emerald City Comic Con in 2011, and James Silvani, the artist, was there doing sketches. So I got this badass. I keep hitting your mic. Badass sketch of Darkwing on this blank cover. I think it was issue 14 or something. The book had been out for a little while. So, just because I liked the character, and I thought his art from what I'd seen was really great. And then, since I had it, I was like, well, I might as well flip through it while I'm here. So when I was hanging out at Comic-Con, I just sat and read this one issue. I was like, damn, well, this is actually really good.
I've read both this and the DuckTales comic that was contemporaneous with it, I think by the same writer.
I think so,
and
too.
both of them are pitch perfect from the show. It feels like you were reading the show.
This was supposed
really
to be
does. If you're a fan of Darkwing Duck from back in the day.
I'm a big fan of Launchpad McQuack.
I
love Launchpad.
It really
McQuack.
reignited my love of the. I'm 33, so when I was a little kid, it was the Disney Afternoon was the big thing, and for kind of my generation, you got home from school.
So I'm in the same boat.
You came home from school and you were watching Gargoyles, Darkwing Duck, Gummy Bears, Tailspin, Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. Those were all some of my favorites. And to this day, I've actually gone back and rewatched a lot of them, and I think they hold up shockingly well. But
Rescue Rangers was always my favorite.
Oh man!
As a kid, Rescue Rangers was. And the interesting thing is, Darkwing Duck, I wasn't super into when I was a little kid. Maybe it's because the Batman animated series was on at the time, and I don't know, when you're 9 or whatever, I'm I don't get it. But now I'm this is basically really funny Batman.
Were they really on at the same time?
They were.
Yeah.
And I thought
insane.
Darkwing Duck was awesome. He had his own rogues gallery, even to Spider-Man.
So
I love it
much
now.
like the
I didn't
Flash's
fully
rogues
appreciate it in my childhood.
I was a little bit older, so I think I definitely dug it.
But this started, it was supposed to be just a 4-part miniseries, and this was the first one that came out, and it did so well, they turned it into an ongoing series. In fact, the only reason this stopped is they got their license yanked by Big Brother Disney, because
they now own a comics
They
company.
own their own store.
Exactly.
So it had nothing to do with sales, nothing to do with quality.
No,
In fact,
all the Boom Disney books were fantastic.
They were great.
Kaboom Studios was killing it for a long time, and that's the saddest thing about Disney buying Marvel is they haven't done anything with these characters yet.
why is there not a Darkwing Duck now? Why? You could even have the same team unless
grab
they're
the same guys, I don't know. That's what makes me sad.
And most
about
of these are out of print now, which makes me really sad because there's at least 4 or 5 volumes, and I only have this one, and they're really expensive now because they're out of print. But this one I snatched when it was, when they still had the license. And but I just think it's absolutely fantastic. If you ever love the show, it's great. I think you can enjoy it even if you hadn't seen the show, but especially for people from our generation, I think there's extra love to be had in this book.
Awesome.
Tell me what you got.
I love the name of it too. It's The Duck Knight Returns. I'm kind of
Volume 2 is Crisis on Infinite Darkwing.
God.
Is that the one where Negaduck comes back? The second volume?
I think so.
Negaduck.
That's the one that has all the different alternate reality versions of Darkwing.
Okay, that is volume 2.
Yeah.
It's Return of Negaduck, and oh my god, that comic is incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Even if we do not pick it, if you were a fan of the cartoon back in the day and you haven't read the comic, find it somehow.
Hunt it down.
Do what you have to do.
And if you see it used somewhere, buy it.
If you find it and it's
real
affordable,
cheap.
buy it.
Yeah.
Just do it
Because they are hella expensive.
stupid
online.
price. Yeah, I keep looking on eBay.
Yeah. All right.
So
tell me what you got.
I'm sticking with my no superheroes pledge, and I was scratching my head. I was trying to find something, and so I dug up another classic of my childhood.
All right.
So this week I'm pitching Tintin by Hergé.
Which one?
I'm gonna pick 3 books out of the Tintin canon that I think are they're good. They stand alone and they give you an excellent sense of what Tintin is. So I'm gonna pick The Black Island, The Shooting Star, and Land of Black Gold.
Cool.
And if you don't know anything about Tintin, it's a Belgian comic.
No Tintin in Tibet? No Golden Crab?
Tintin. I didn't want to do Tintin in Tibet and The Black Island.
That's fair.
And the the golden crab.
Golden crab, right?
It's
the golden crab.
Yeah, golden.
Is part one of a multi-part thing, and I wanted to pick 3 standalones.
That's fair. That's fair.
But
Just like we did Hellboy Masks of Monsters instead of...
The first issue.
yeah.
So it's a Belgian comic that originally started, I think, in the 30s and ran up through the 50s about a boy reporter named Tintin who has adventures. Yeah. And he's got a cast of friends. There's Captain Haddock, Professor Calculus, his dog Snowy. They have some other friends. The 2 detectives, Thompson and Thompson.
Basically a very old school Johnny Quest.
Yeah. I mean, it's just kind of it's this kid. He's maybe like 17, 18 years old. And he just kind of goes on adventures around the world. It's really fun. The artwork is incredible.
It really is.
Like, I think this is probably one of the origins of my love of incredibly clean line work. And there's a specific word for that style that I can't remember.
I can't remember what it's called either. You probably heard of Tintin and Hergé as being very racist. But this is very, his early works were much less informed than his later works.
Yeah.
And Hergé really did become much more
He was incredibly recalcitrant about his earlier works.
His later works
and actually went
really
back
powerful.
and edited a number of them to make them less racist.
And his later works are much more understanding of other cultures and much more interested in other cultures.
This comic is incredibly popular in Europe. There was a recent movie by Spielberg. There was the cartoon from the 90s, if you saw that. It's something that it's never gone away in Europe. It's always been incredibly popular, and it's kind of been something that goes along in the background in the United States. I think a lot of people know about Tintin, but it's the kind of thing where if you're not really into comics, especially like non-superhero comics, you may never have heard about it. And that is a crying shame because it is truly one of the classic comic books of the 20th century.
I think it's one of the I think it transcends comic books. This is one of the classic pieces of this is like one of the this is part of the genesis of graphic art in the Western world.
Well, it's I think it's contemporary with the French comic Spirou, which is really famous in Europe as well.
I don't know that
similar one.
I don't know that if it was at the same time.
Asterix and Obelix was at the same time too. So
yeah.
I always think of those 3 together.
Yeah, Tintin and Asterix and Obelix. I had a number of them on my bookshelf when I was a kid, along with some other things, notably ElfQuest.
Spirou or Spirou, however you say that, is French, and it almost never gets translated out of French. So that's the reason that a lot of people don't hear about that one. And I don't actually know a lot about that one. I've read a couple just because I found English translations of them and downloaded them and was like, oh, this is really interesting. But they don't normally get published in English, so that I know of. Yeah.
So 3 issues of Tintin.
All right, Cade, what do you got?
Okay, so I brought Brian Michael Bendis classic, and that is Jinx, which is a graphic crime novel, similar in vein to the Sin City books.
More
very
noir feel.
Yeah, very black and white, noir.
Yeah,
crime.
Strictly
really,
black and white, no gray tones.
Very heavy blacks.
Oh, yeah. No, very much in the style of Sin City. Although, a much not as heavy story-wise.
Yeah, but the art style is...
The art is very heavily influenced by Miller, I would say.
Yeah.
I just opened Cade's version, or the copy that he's brought, and the binding was broken, and it fell apart on me.
And the story of that is, I got that from the Spokane County Library for $0.25. Nice. But I paid them $1 because I was like, "What? You can't give this away for $1? I don't have a quarter, so here's $1." And they're like, "Oh, we'll count it as a donation." But it's in terrible shape. This binding the binding fell apart. So
the first half of the book comes out
completely out,
and it's like
a
little
whole
trade.
copy you can borrow. If we pick it, I have a whole copy you can borrow.
Yeah.
That's
but
one thing.
Still, for $1, not bad.
Yeah, so
I mean,
that was cool. But that's where that came from. That's why it's in shitty shape, because it was a library copy.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to give a little pitch of the story on there, Cade, or?
I've actually never read it. And that's why that's why I'm pitching it, is actually to get me to read it.
Well, regardless, I will get you my copy and you can read it regardless.
What's wrong with my copy?
I can read this.
Yeah.
It comes out of the
Okay,
binding
I mean,
in like
who's throwing me over?
it's like 2 trades.
Kate, I gave that to Kate. Kate owns that now.
Okay, good deal. Good deal.
Kate has his own copy, Joe.
He does. He does.
He doesn't need you. He doesn't need you.
Nobody needs me. Apparently, this is.
All right. So what'd you bring, Chard?
I brought a book that I had read the first issue of this and been like, whoa, that's really weird and different, and I'm interested. And then I totally forgot about it, as I do with a lot of comic books, because it's coming out weekly, and I fucking forgot. And so this week I was, going through the shop, and I saw this on the shelf, and I was like, stop, I'm talking about it. You already looked through it. You're trying to take it out of my hands again. Sure, here. I don't know who wrote it, that's why I was going to read
Nick
Nick
Spencer.
Spencer and Christian Ward, and it's a book called Infinite Vacation. So I saw it on the shelf, and I was like, and don't flip through it too much, because there's a lot of, visual spoilers in this book. But the
back
idea,
cover is beautiful.
The book, I think, personally, the art in this book is what grabbed me, and it's really pretty. It's just super different. There's a point in the book in which you're turning the pages around fully, and there's just, writing is all over, because what this book is about is the infinite multiple universe theory, essentially, where they don't spell it out quite like this, but every time you make a decision in the world, there's a theory that an alternate reality is created in which you made the opposite decision, or something like that. So this is basically there are these infinite multiple universes, and you can travel to them by paying a fee. You can either go visit your other self and take a little trip into his life, kind of like subletting their life, or you can switch places with them if they if they find your reality more appealing. And so this guy, I think his name is Mark. His name is on his name tag. You have to wear a name tag that's so that they can find you. But anyway, I think his name is Mark. Anyway, he's
I was flipping through it and it said Mark.
Yeah, Mark. He's a serial vacationer, because he's unsatisfied with his life, and he's not exactly sure what his life is supposed to be about. And so he has the option to travel to all these different universes and see alternate versions of himself. So he travels to a universe in which he dropped out of college and opened a surf shop in Hawaii with his friend, which is something that he could have done, but he didn't do. He chose to stay on this path, and he visits where he listened to his mom and became an architect. He visits that life. So he visits a bunch of different worlds, but he's kind of always not sure what life is supposed to be about. And I kind of like that the idea of what do you do with your life? But the actual story is that these other marks come to him and say, someone's been killing all of the marks. They're assassinating your other versions of you, and we don't know why, but we found out that you're the actual target, that they know now that you're the mark that they're trying to kill. So we're
the mark.
Yeah, we're gonna hide you in another universe. And they switch him with a guy who is this religion that doesn't believe in vacationing. They are what the vacationers call dead enders. And they don't, then what the religion calls themselves singularists, where they think that it's wrong to vacation to your other life, that this is the life that you were given, and you shouldn't go. So they hide him in that universe with a guy who won't vacation. And so there's this whole, big conspiracy of the corporation that lets you vacation, and there's these panels in here. The art's really interesting, and there are panels in here that are photographs of real people, which you guys probably saw while you were flipping through it around the table. And those are the advertisements. So there are commercials in the middle by the corporation, and there's an interview in another section. I'm trying not to spoil anything for anyone, but these are commercials and interviews with that mega corporation. So there's this kind of cool conspiracy advertising media element to it too. And so I just found it really fascinating. I reread the whole thing today, and I really like it, and the art is definitely worth flipping through it just for that. And if you like kind of alternate reality, but also still grounded in a very realistic idea of the reason he's traveling to these other universes is because he has an experience that a lot of us have, which is at some point in your life you're going to be unsatisfied with what you're doing at that moment. And that's why you make changes in your life. And so Mark has to figure out what it is he wants to make a change for. He has no direction. And this book has a great beginning, middle, and end. It's a good story, and at the end, I felt was very satisfying. So I felt like it was going one way, and it went a different way, and I liked it. So I really enjoyed this series. I think check it out. Infinite Vacation. Nick Spencer does a great job with this. It's really fun. So Joe, what do you want to read?
Darkwing Duck.
Nail it.
Nice.
Eric?
I'm gonna go with Hopeless Savages.
Sick. Toby.
I don't know. I'm very torn. Can we come back to me?
Kate.
I want to read either Hopeless Savages or Darkwing Duck.
All right, flip a coin.
Hopeless Savages.
All right, Toby.
Chard.
Are you going to break the tie?
I'll break the tie. Assuming there is a tie.
Yeah. Man. This is really difficult.
I know.
Because I would pick Darkwing Duck, but I don't know what I would say about it other than
It's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's Darkwing Duck, and I've read it
That's
before.
exactly why I didn't pick
And
it. It's
so-
just because I mean, I'm just going to say, hey, I liked it.
That would be awful if we were positive.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's not so much that I don't want to be
No,
positive,
that's all
because there's
good.
been plenty of times where we all love the book. It's just, I don't know what I would say about it, except that I really like it. But I think that it is a great work because it's very much like a lighthearted approach at satire, which often satire is very dark and like, look how stupid that thing is. But this is like satire out of love, and that's
Yeah.
what I really
Okay,
like
I'll tell you
about
what.
it.
I'm going to vote for Hopeless Savages.
All right.
So then Chart doesn't get a vote.
I don't get a vote. It doesn't like most weeks. It is irrelevant what I think about a book. All right, so next week we are reading Hopeless Savages, and thanks for listening, guys.
It's the greatest hits 2000-2010. It's a pretty big.
It's a thick one from
edition,
Oni Press.
From Oni, but it's cheap. It's $20.
Yeah, good value. So read that. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you next week.
We love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.